Thank you for waiting. We will now begin the International Disaster Reduction Alliance Forum 2025, Part 1, Disaster Prevention Measures to Combat Climate Change Risks, and Measures for a Sustainable Future. I will be acting as the MC for today's event. My name is Naomi Shimizu from Hyogo Prefecture. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
First, on behalf of the organizers, we will be having the chairperson of Disaster Reduction Alliance and executive director of Disaster Reduction Human Renovation Institution. We are going to have Mr. Yoshiaki Kawata to say a few words of opening. Nice to meet you. I am Kawata. Today, we have so many participants and we are extremely happy. And also on the YouTube, we have live stream. Therefore, I believe there are people who are joining online. So I would like to extend my appreciation for those people who are watching YouTube. Today, we are having this International Disaster Reduction Alliance Forum 2025. Our DRA was established in 2002, and we had the first forum in the following year. This year, this session is part 1, but we're going to have part 2 in September. And regarding the details of part 2, the study is going on, but we are holding part 1, and then we're going to have part 2. And at that time, there should be Osaka Kansai Expo. So for sure, we are going to have some international contents, but not all the details are decided now. This year again, we have both distribution in Japanese and English languages. So we are expecting that we're going to have an exciting session in both languages. And we also welcomed the Emperor and Empress of Japan. We on the January 17th, and we had a ceremony because the 30th anniversary is an important milestone. After 30 years after the Great Hanshin earthquake, what are the changes and what kind of information can we disseminate to the world? We are planning to spend 1 year to study what we can do. And more than 6,400 people passed away because of the earthquake. And I understand that this great earthquake was a trigger to study or deepen the study on the disaster prevention. And I thought that there were many improvements made, but then we are now realizing what are the challenges. I believe we are now facing the important milestone. And centering on DRI, that we have 20 organizations that are the member, and we are gathering in order to hold this event. And the result of this forum is being disseminated, and we are playing an important mission to share the result of this forum. And as everybody knows, we are facing the critical the challenges of the global warming. And due to global warming, annual rainfall or the frequency or the intensity of the rainfall or the property of the tropic cyclone is increasing more and more. And for sure, we are the danger or the risk of these things are becoming more and more of this. But as President Trump of the United States mentioned in his speech, it seems as if he is trying to take a policy that is ignoring this kind of a climate crisis. And that is a severe concern. And not to do anything is, of course, not good in light of these crises. So from various places or various occasions, we should share the information, what will be happening down the line. And political circles should follow that. Otherwise, and if we accept such kind of the political the measures, our world will be facing the crisis. That is why, with that in mind, we would like to hold this forum. As everybody knows, in Los Angeles of the United States, there was a severe wildfire. According I believe there are 10 reasons behind why it became so severe. Wildfire is a natural phenomenon, but now there are more than 45 trillion yen damage. And this 45 trillion yen is triple the damage of the East Japan earthquake. And now we are having this kind of a severe damage worldwide. And I believe this is not only the issue of nature, but I think that this is also coming from the social factor as well. In that sense, wildfire, as a matter of fact, it's not only the natural phenomenon, but we can also regard it as the social phenomenon. Just like the global warming, as a matter of fact, this wildfire in Los Angeles has such kind of a significant meaning. And of course, we have this increasing concern of these phenomena, but we try today having a discussion with the theme of the disaster countermeasures to combat the climate change one and the climate change risk and the measures for sustainable future. We would like to confirm the measures that we're trying to take in Japan, and we would like to seek the potential for the contributing to the international society and the potential of the collaboration. And this year, as I mentioned earlier, we are planning to hold a conference regarding the climate change. So I hope that you would have an expectation today. And today we have the director of the Center for Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, or the Disaster Prevention Research Institute of Kyoto University, to give us a keynote lecture on the climate change. And also, we also have the professor of the Center for Integrated Disaster Information Research of Tokyo University, Professor Ohara Miho, to have a lecture regarding Japan's contribution to the consideration of climate change adaptation measures in the Republic of the Philippines. And in the second half, we are going to have a tripartite discussion including myself, with the theme of confronting the risk of global climate change with Japan's disaster prevention and mitigation measures. I sincerely hope that this forum will give some insight to the world regarding this topic. This concludes my speech. Thank you very much.
So we have provided the greeting word from the organizer, and then on behalf of the Hyogo Prefecture, the prefectural governor will give the word. The governor Saito sent the video message, so please take a look at the video. I am Motohiko Saito, the governor of Hyogo Prefecture. I would like to extend my greetings as one of the organizers of the International Disaster Reduction Alliance Forum. DRA was established in 2002 with the aim of creating an international base through the collaboration between the specialist organizations gathered in Hatto, Kobe. And I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone involved. Last March, Mr. Makoto Yokibe, who had served as the chairperson of the DRA for many years, passed away. In the field of the disaster reduction and the restoration of the Hyogo prefectures has been a central player in Japan, and he made a significant effort for creating the framework for the restoration policies based on the concept of the creative recovery. And I'd like to extend the deepest gratitude for his effort. And 30 years has passed since the great Hanshin Awaji earthquake, and on the 17th of this month, we held Hyogo Safety Day event in the presence of the Emperor and Empress. And we once again offered our prayers for the victims of the disaster and expressed our gratitude for the warm support from Japan and overseas. And we affirmed our determination to pass on the experience and lessons. Over the past 30 years, Japan and many other parts of the world have been hit by numerous major disasters, and one of the factors that is increasing the risk of disaster on a global scale is climate change, which is a theme of today's forum. At COP26 in 2021, the agreement was adopted to limit the rise in the global average temperatures to within 1.5 degrees Celsius. And while there is a call for the acceleration of the international effort, Hyogo Prefecture has clearly stated its goal of achieving carbon neutrality in 2050 and promoting the specific actions through the collaborations. And we also are focusing on efforts to the infrastructure development. And Osaka Kansai Expo will finally open in April. And Hyogo Prefecture designate the period from September 15th to 21st as a creative restoration week. And plan to hold the event such as Creative Reconstruction Summit, and also this part two of the DRA forum, so that we'll be able to share the creative recovery. And I would appreciate your support and collaboration for that. And in closing, I hope that today's forum will lead to the new development in disaster reduction and mitigation measures in Japan and contribution to the international community.
Next, we would like to have Ms. Makiko Ohashi, Director in charge of the Cabinet Office of Government of Japan, to give us few words of greeting. Chairperson Kawata and to all the distinguished guests, at the opening of the International DRA Forum 2025, I would like to say a few words on behalf of Mr. Kita, Councillor of the Cabinet Office. I would like to express my heartfelt congratulations on the holding of the International DRA Forum this year again. In particular, as this year marks the 30th anniversary of Great Anshin earthquake, it is extremely important to hold discussions in Kobe on Japan's efforts to prevent and mitigate disasters and its contribution to the world. I understand the theme of today's forum is the disaster countermeasures to combat climate change and climate change risks and the measures for a sustainable future. Last year was a year in which we were reminded again of the current situation where the risk of weather-related disasters continue to increase globally. In September 2024, Typhoon Yagi caused tremendous damage in many countries in Southeast Asia, with buildings and infrastructure being destroyed and a large-scale flooding occurring. In Europe, too, there were major flooding disasters caused by storms, which led to social chaos. In addition, there have been a succession of severe weather disasters, such as flooding and landslides in various parts of the world, including Africa and Central and South America. Here in Japan, 26 typhoons formed last year, and many areas were hit by heavy rain disasters caused by linear precipitation bands. In September, after typhoon number 14 turned into a low-pressure system, it brought record-breaking rainfall to the Sea of Japan side, leading to compound disaster in which the areas affected by Noto earthquake which are still in the process of recovery, were hit by further flooding. We pray for the sorrow of those who lost their lives in these disasters, and we offer our heartfelt sympathy to those affected by them. In Japan, based on the lessons learned from a long history of disasters, efforts have been made to continuously strengthen the nation's land and build disaster-resistant towns. As disasters become more severe and frequent in light of ongoing climate change and social changes, it is necessary to further strengthen efforts to analyze disaster risks using the latest technology, create disaster prevention strategy, and implement disaster mitigation measures, and prepare for rapid disaster response in recovery and reconstruction. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which inherits the ideals of the Hyogo Framework for Action adopted here in Kobe in 2005, is now approaching the end of its implementation period, which will last until 2030. The interim review of the framework, which was conducted in 2023, pointed out that the number of people affected by disasters disasters, and the economic damage caused by disasters is still significant, and that the international cooperation in the field of disaster prevention in developing countries is insufficient. In a world where disaster risk continues to rise, we hope that this will be a valuable opportunity to consider how Japan's disaster prevention and the mitigation technologies and knowledge can be used to make the world more disaster resistant through the discussions and talks of experts working in the front line. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to the Hyogo Prefectural Government and the DRI, as well as to the members of the DRA for their efforts in preparing today's event. And I would like to conclude my speech by wishing you all the best for the success in the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Now we would like to begin the keynote speech. Today we have two speakers. First, Deputy Executive Director of Kyoto University and the Director of the Center for Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, Disaster Prevention Research Institute of Kyoto University, Professor Eiichi Nakakita will give us the speech on the theme of the climate change adaptation for natural disasters. And please refer to the program for the profiles of the speaker, as there are the time constraints. Now, the Professor Nakakita, the floor is yours. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you very much for this opportunity. And I extend my appreciation to the organizer of the forum and DRI. Thank you very much. I myself, as shown in this front page as the titles, ever since 2002, there is a mixed initiated the climate change projections and evaluation program. And in 2007, for the natural disaster, the forecast and production started through these activities, and especially since 2007, we have been working on this project, and this is the science basis of the forecast. And about 16 years ago, we also started the project together with the MLIT for the water control project, and it's been a long relationship. And now that there is the better understanding about the natural disaster predictions on a science basis, and try to update the water control programs and river control programs based upon this research outcome about 3 years ago. And now there is the 120 rivers. The management programs throughout the country has been reviewed and updated, and 20 of them have been completed so far. So I'd like to touch upon that progress as well. So this is the agenda. So the first topic is climate change already starting, and then the scientific climate change prediction. And number 3 is torrential rains, the representative disaster, and impact of the climate change, such as the surge storm. And number 4 is the hazards and climate change. And number 5 is climate change adaptation without regret. So this is only the entry level that I will be able to discuss today. But ever since 2010, almost every year, that Japan has been hit by the natural disasters, especially the torrential rain and the flood and typhoon-related disasters like 2012 in Kanto, the major flooding, and 1 year before that, there is the West Japan torrential rain. disaster. And regarding Kobe, there is the typhoon number 21 and the surge storm. And there is the flooding of the Kansai International Airport as well at that time. So through this intensive torrential rain, is increasing year by year. And as was mentioned earlier, in the past few years, there is especially the torrential rain during the rainy season in Akita and Yamagata, and the flooding disasters, including the railway, is happening. So there are so many events going on, and scientifically, we did the analysis compared to the no climate change scenario, and we try to clarify those differences with and without the climate change. Based upon the former programs announced by the meteorological agency in Japan, and for example, East Japan happened in 2018, and because of the global warming, the precipitation increased by 6%, and the West Japan, the precipitation increased by about 10%. And in 2020, July, there is the major flooding in the Kyushu area. The precipitation total increased by 15%. And then in 2023, there was a heavy rain, and precipitation increased by over 15% or 16%. So as you see, that's the total precipitation increases gradually. And related to the global warming, there are the two axes. One is mitigation measures, which means that control the river the discharge, and mitigate the risk of the flooding, and also the flow control. And compared to the 10 years ago, the CO2 emissions situation is being mitigated. So that is the one pillar, the mitigation measure. And the other pillar is that the adaptation measure, because global warming already happening. So for example, the water control, the future target shows the fine line, horizontal line. And because of the global warming, we have to change the target. And in accordance with the changed target, we have to take the flexible adaptation measures. That is so-called resilience. So we have to shift to the new, the idea, new thinking. So this mitigation and the adaptation, we have to take both measures. And there's a COP21 going on. And in parallel, the adaptation for the climate change is necessary right now. And for the global warming, the air is heated and the sea temperature goes up. And once the sea temperature goes up, and it's difficult to go down, and there's the even if we set the temperature increase by below 2 degrees Celsius from the Industrial Revolution, it is too late from the perspective of the sea water temperature, because the seawater temperature is always the hugely impacted by the atmospheric temperature change. So, number two, scientific climate change prediction. As I said, the various the programs of the Megist, and every 5 years we generate the new programs and innovative programs. And now that it is the advanced climate models going on, so there has been 15 projects ever since. So this is the globe. And because of the global warming, the atmosphere temperature heat up and sea surface temperature rises, and the seawater evaporates more easily. So this shows that 2080x. So toward the end of 21st century, the CO2 emission related scenario. And we don't know if it could be the 2 degrees or 4 degrees Celsius increase from the Industrial Revolution. So depending on that different forecast, we make a different scenario. This is the same picture. The white part is the cloud, and the colored is the intensity of the rain. And when the typhoon is created in the south part and it's coming to Japan, approaching Japan, and at the end of the 21st century, how much typhoon will be generated in the south and approach Japan, and what would be the intensity of that, like would that be the super typhoon scale, and how many such super typhoons is coming. So we use the physiological formula, a physical formula, and make the prediction to see that the future state based on the science. So this is how we predict the future, but there is no one answer. So we don't, and even if we make the like a forecast, this would happen in 2050. It is difficult to convince everyone. Therefore, we create the various different scenarios and try to increase the accuracy according by collecting the wisdoms and the data. And based upon that, we make the water control plan. So there is the 20-kilometer mesh. And this is a map of Japan. And there are the guerrilla torrential rain and intensive rain, heavy rains. So this is the granularity of 5 kilometers. So more detail for to make the forecast for the rainy season. So this is the quite Japan unique, and based upon this, we control the landslide and the flooding predictions. So typhoon and the rainy seasons and the guerrilla rainstorm is summarized here. When the sea temperature increases, the risk of typhoon increase. But because of the radiation, the atmosphere is stabilized to a certain point. You often hear about the stability of the atmosphere to the weather forecast. But in general, once the temperature goes up and the atmosphere becomes a little bit more stable because of the and then therefore the number of the typhoon is not necessarily increasing. However, uh, once that the typhoon survives, and then that the intensity of the typhoon is likely to be much bigger, like a super typhoon, and I show the various disaster events, and there's including the Kyushu during the rainy season. Every year we get nervous about the major disasters. Not only southern part, but also the northern part of Japan are facing more torrential rains and the flooding, and this frequency is going to increase, and also the total precipitation is going to increase. So this is what is happening in terms of typhoon. And in terms of the rainy season, it is the expanding eastward and northward. And the torrential rain also increased along the Sea of Japan. And the guerrilla rainstorm, the Agency of the Meteorology in Japan does not use this word, but the guerrilla rainstorm. Maybe you're familiar with the torrential rain in Toka River, and that was a representative of the Kobe. So this kind of the guerrilla rainstorm is happening because of the inflow of the low-level water vapor, especially in this Kinki region.
So now I will talk about the Japanese rainy season called the Bayou Rainfront. In Kuma River, the flooding was done, and I believe the precipitation was increased due to global warming by 10% plus. And there was even if there was no inundation from the river, there was more of the inland water damage. So these are the two types of the water damage, and there will be a severe landslides. That is the concern we are facing. This is the one in the Mabicho in Okayama Prefecture. I believe you are familiar with the hazard map, but the same area that is represented in hazard map are damaged. So we need to treasure and pay respect to the inundation image, the information, and I think you need to use such kind of information to decide where to live. That importance is increasing, and there will be a lot of landslide damage as well. Now, even in the North Sea Japan, this will be a risk. Up until now, it was particularly true in the Western Japan, but that is happening in the unprecedented area as well. Because of global warming, there will be more torrential rains, and there will be more rainstorm, and it will be more frequent, and there will be rainstorm that will be happening in the area that never used to be. And also on top of that, there will be a torrential rain that used to be happening in the Western Japan, happening in northeast area, Japan, and there can be landslide as well. This should be happening in the future, which was not the case in the past. This is the simulation result of the torrential rain. And you see the dates. This was the torrential rain in Western Japan. As time went by, the precipitation increased, and the black part, that is the simulation based on the 2018 situation, and the blue is the one without the global warming since the 1980s. And of course, the temperature was lower from that. And we are comparing the two. And as I already mentioned earlier, there's an increase of the precipitation by around 6 to 7% due to global warming. This is the scientific evidence. For example, regarding the Bayou rainy season in Japan, due to the simulation based on the simulation using a computer. This is the forecast in 2080s. We are using a forecast for the future in order to see what will be happening in the future regarding the torrential rain. Let me show you this one first. If you look at the right side, this is from 1950s onwards. If the temperature increases by 4 degrees, how much water vapor do we have from the south? If you look at the red part, you see there are water vapor coming from south to Japan. That is what is shown in red. And in the east, it's going more to the north, and it will also be coming to the Japan seaside as well, which means that there will be torrential rain on the Japan seaside as well. That is what you can tell from here. And as a result of that, due to this simulation, and if we count the number of the torrential rain, it will be like this. In the 20 years' time, this is the current climate. it is a little before now. I hope you can see on the left side. This is the present climate, and you see there are a lot of torrential rain in the Kyushu. But if there's an increase by 2 degrees or 4 degrees, not only in Kyushu and also in Western Japan, but also on Japan seaside and the Tohoku region as well in Japan, there will be a torrential rain. And in every year, there will be raining season, but it will be going across the Tsugaru Strait and will even reach Hokkaido. That is the situation of the rainy season. This is difficult to understand, so I'm going to skip this. But the message is that there will be more rainfalls caused due to the global warming. As you can see, the yellow or the red oval means that the precipitation volume will be more due to global warming, and it also shows that it will be longer. So that I talked about the rain that causes hazards, but now I would like to talk about hazards. You see the summary, but I would like to explain the example using church, but there will be an increase in once in 100-year level maximum annual river discharge across the country. And also, with the global warming, not only there will be a torrential rain, the time when it's not raining will also be severe. And of course, we know the reason for that. And then the aggravation of once in 10-year level drought, water discharge in many watersheds will be happening. And also, talking about the snow in the winter, there will be less snow in the winter. In average, thinking about the rise, but and there will be less snow melt. But there is something called the JPCZ. I believe you hear about this in the TV news. There's the snow cloud stretching from the Korean peninsula to cause a heavy snow. And you might think, why heavy snow despite of global warming? But because of the temperature rise of the Japan sea water, there will be such kind of phenomenon. And there will be a heavy snowfall because of this. And nowadays, from Fukui Prefecture to the Niigata, there is this heavy snowfall, and it is going away from Western Japan, and due to global warming, it is shifting more to Tohoku area. So in the northern Kyoto or the northern Hyogo Prefecture, we believe there will be less heavy snowfall. But other than that, you see here. The increased risk of the surface landslides or the deep-seated landslides. We believe the frequency will increase for these landslides, and in the Tohoku area, there are a lot of accumulation of the muds. But if there's a heavy torrential rain, there can be landslides happening due to torrential rains, and which means that how to revisit the red zone or yellow zone. That is a question, and for that we are continuing the analysis and the study. And in the Kobe, there was the flooding because of the storm surge, and we believe the risk will be even more severe down the line. And I have 6 minutes left, but I want to explain this slide as well. Or maybe it's a bit difficult to see, but depending on the color, you can tell the increase of the water discharge. This yellow part, this is the mouth of the river mouth, and there will be the if you look at the yellow part, that is from 1.2 to 1.3 times increase, but that is on the left side. You see the 2-degree increase, but we don't know whether there will be 4-degree increase. That is why we need to update the flood control plan based on the 2-degree scenario. But if you look at the right side, So up until now, the flooding was happening once in 100 years, but you see it is now more in the above 50, which means that it used to be 100 once in 100 years, but with a 2 degrees increase, it will be once in 50 years discharge, which means that the frequency will be doubled. That is the message here. But if there is a 4-degree increase, it will be once in the 25 years. It will be that frequent. That is the message here. I'm going to skip this, but you see the darker color area are the one with the area of the higher landslide risk. Now, lastly, I would like to talk about the no regret to climate change adaptation. In the past 15 to 16 years, we were working with Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transportation, or the Ministry of Agriculture, and with the academics and those ministries were working together so that those ministries will believe in our study. And then based on that, we were discussing what measures should we take. And thanks to those efforts, the public authorities now believing in what the academics are saying, and they are having the flood control measures. And they need to authorities needs to consider how much tax should be used for the flood control, and they made the decision what to do. And we've been working on this for the 3 years. But there are many things to this. But for the rainfall, it will be 1.1 times if the temperature will increase by 2 degrees, and the water discharge of a river will be around 1.2 times. And we believe the flood frequency will be doubled. And based on this, there will be flood control. And the message today is the master plan was using the past assumption, but it will be increased by 1.2 times. And through the dams or the other hardwares, there were efforts to control the flood. But now, no matter how much hardware we have, of course, we need to reinforce those hardwares. But even if we reinforce the hardware, we know that that will not be enough in the future. And that we believe that the only resort we can take is to store the water in the various parts of the river. And this is what we call the watershed flood control. But still, it is on the way for the development, and it is. The purpose is not to increase the water in the river, but the rain will be increasing by 1.1 times, regardless of the river. So it is the municipalities that creates their plan to fight against the measures. So municipalities and central government needs to work together to enhance the safety so that we can control the flood. Already, municipalities, including Tokyo or the Osaka city, is changing a plan regarding sewage, etc. And lastly, in the future, we believe that there will be aggravation of global warming. You see, there's a rise over here. And the orange part shows the limit of the measures, and we are lifting the measures. And if something goes beyond the limit, there will be disasters. So we are trying to enhance the level of adaptation, but it is very important to do this step by step. We don't know whether the temperature will increase by 4 degrees, so that is why we first think about a 2 degrees increase. And you see, there was the storm surge due to Typhoon Jebi, and there was the water gate in Osaka. And it was functioning for the first time in the Typhoon Jebi. And this water gate was functioning for the protection. But we are now designing the new gate. and the design is over, and there's a recreation of the water gate. And for that, we are using the assumption with a 2-degree increase. However, there can be a 4 degrees increase. That is why, because the foundation is needed, that is also done. This is to prevent the rework. The, we do. We need to think about the step by step, the adaptation, and also the work that would not cause any regret. Due to the hourly output from the climate model, we can predict the impact of the climate change on hazards. And the question is how the public authorities and the citizens would consider the work together to consider what to do. And if we are not going to take any action because of the uncertainty, we are going to be facing a severe situation. And please imagine the next decade, how bad it can be if we don't do anything. So we need to take measures. And we also need to consider the resilience against a disaster. Today, I talk about the measures by the authority, which is a top-down approach, but I also believe that the bottom-up approach is also important. And what I wanted to say is, as you can see at the very bottom, we need to think about 100 years for the town development and the urban development. In order to deal with the climate change, we think we need to think in 100-year span. So we would also like to ask citizens as well to consider these ideas. And I think that kind of consideration should be happening in the local community measures. And there should be a collaboration with the authority.
So we have to take the actions immediately, and bottom-up approach will be essential, especially from now on. In addition to the top-down, and regional disaster reduction needs to be promoted in a timely manner and in accordance with the global warming. So this concludes my lecture. Thank you very much. Next, we will have a keynote speech by the Professor Miho Ohara from Center for Integrated Disaster Information Research at Graduate School of Interfaculty Initiative in Information Studies, University of Tokyo, and topic Japan's contribution to the consideration of climate change adaptation measure in the Republic of Philippines. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Miho Ohara from Tokyo University of Tokyo, the Center for the Integrated Disaster Information Research, and also the Interfaculty Initiative in Information Studies and the Institute of the Industrial Science. And I'd like to talk about the Japan's contribution to the consideration of climate change adaptation measures in the Republic of the Philippines. And today's lecture is not just the personal activity, but also the research project of our center. So, have you ever seen that the flood hazard map? And this is in the vicinity of the Tokyo Bungo City, where the University of Tokyo located. So this shows the flooding and the potential flooding through the mapping. And in Japan, almost all the city, town, and villages have this kind of the hazard map. So the local government is responsible to creating the map, and now that 98% of the cities and towns have this kind of the hazard map and distribute it to the residents. So I am sure that they have seen this kind of the hazard map. And it's called a hazard map or the predicted inundation area maps. So it not only shows the flood-prone area, but also the relevant informations are included. And this is the past the flooding mapping, and also the potential the flood-prone area mapping, and also the susceptible areas based upon our the research. And in Japan, we make the mapping based upon this flood analysis, and it shows based upon the rainfall distribution, elevation, land use, and the river channel cross section, and shows that the what will be the river discharge and the river water levels and the flooded area and the flood depths. So like this, and based upon the data and the experience, we can predict the disaster and the damages. So we do have this kind of the know-how and infrastructures to predict the current and the future, and then share the potential risk by the society. So when the society is informed with the risk, so it is called so-called the risk-informed society. And as Professor Nakakita mentioned, that we are facing the social change in addition to the climate change. So we have to predict the future state accurately to be ready for all kinds of these scenarios and make the design and realize such society. So this is before the Industrial Revolutions, the change of the world, the average temperature. And currently we are here in the red line, and there is about the 1 degree Celsius increase from the Industrial Revolution, and we are expecting 2 to 4 degrees Celsius increase in a worst scenario. So many people have the interest and concern about this. And with this, the future state, how we can protect the future and design and realize a society without regrets. This is the common challenge, not just Japan, but also the worldwide. And the agency, meteorological agency, make these various projections. And a scenario of the 2 degrees and the 4 degrees Celsius increase is the precipitation, typhoon, flooding, and also the sea level change are forecasted. But those kind of projections, there are only the limited countries who can do this kind of the projections. In Japan, we have the great science technologies and data collection know-how, but in the developing countries, the technology is quite limited, and it's quite difficult for them to make this kind of the projections. Why is it difficult to predict? There is not just the technical and the institutional challenges, but all kind of the different challenges. So I'd like to explain what kind of the challenges those developing countries are facing. For example, the technical challenges, they need input informations. And for that, they have the rainfall observation data for a certain period. And if the data is intermittent, that you cannot make the accurate predictions. So the quality and accuracy of the data is very important, as well as the quantity of the data. And this data collection is quite challenging for the developing countries. And when they try to do the analysis, there are few people who understand the mathematics or how to calculate those data. And also the computer environment is limited, and also the facility data or the other relevant data are not necessarily available. And once you enter certain data, that will be the output. However, there is no way for them to validate those output. Therefore, because of the lack of the validity, those output is not fully utilized, and in the Philippines, it's not the exceptional. So the hazard map is only the research basis. So it is not created on the municipal levels nor distributed to all the residents. And in terms of the institutional challenges, because of the undeveloped legal systems, it is difficult to achieve the unity at the local government levels. So in Japan, there is the long-term observation data accumulated, and now there is the hazard map available at 98% of the municipalities, and it reflects the inland and the river flooding and so on. But not 100% of the people are fully aware of those the hazard map. So unless this hazard map is leveraged effectively, it has no meaning. So we in order to really mitigate the disaster, those kind of the hazard map needs to be leveraged more effectively. So in Japan, there are still such challenges, and we have spent many years with that. But when you look at the outside of Japan, there are many developing countries who do not even have those hazard map. I'd like to refer to the Republic of the Philippines and there is the science research is in progress, and there is the huge development in this area. So in near future, the hazard map will become the available, but now we are working with them as a counterpart. So I'd like to share the situation in the Philippines. So this is the Republic of Philippines, and you see the many typhoons in the past struck in the area that there is the research institutes that we work with, and especially the Manila, in like a passing Makita River and the Laguna Lake Basin is the area that we forecast. And in 2000, there's the total 1,000 were victimized because of the typhoon. And also in 2021, there is the over 200 people lost their lives through the typhoon. So that like thousands or tens of thousands of people could die in the major typhoon, unfortunately. And especially in the Philippines, different from the country, the population is increasing. And for example, Pampagawa River, the population increased by 1.2 times by 2045, and by 2045 it would increase by 1.3 times. And once the population goes up, the flood disaster risk goes up accordingly. So what kind of the adaptation measure needs to be taken? So this is the big challenge for Philippines. So through our project, we try to collaborate with our counterpart. So those two basins, we especially talk about the southern part, which is the Pasin Makina River and the Laguna Lake Basin. And in the southern part, there is the Laguna River, which is the 1.3 times bigger than the Lake Biwa. And you see that it looks like three fingers. So this is the November 2020, the Typhoon Ulysses satellite image. And it may not be clear, but the lake level went up, and there is the inundation in the coastal area. And brown is that the flooding through the satellite image, and we analyzed those images and see that the purple is the flooded area based upon the satellite image. And the annual maximum water is the 12.5 meter in Laguna Lake, but it was at 12.9 meters at that time. So the water came into the lake, and the surface went up as a result of the typhoon. And there is the Laguna Lake Development Institutions, and at that institutions, the areas at the altitude of the 12.5 meter or below is unsuitable for the habitation, because once the inundation takes place, the area could be flooded. But at the time of the 2020 Ulysses, this unsuitable, other than the unsuitable for the habitation, the other area was also flooded. So this the potential inundation is going to expand more in the future. So to what extent it is going to expand, and how we should adjust to those changes are the current the issue. So the concentration of the population is not just the issue of Philippines, but in Metro Manila is the sixth largest city in East Asia, and the concentration of the population is especially severe. And once the Lake Laguna area has the high risk of the inundation, and the population is flowing out to the Metro Manila, and there is even more the concentration of the populations because of this risk. So in order to avoid such the centralization of the population, it is very important to take the mitigation plan for the around area, and also take the plan for this big city, not just Philippines, but overall Asia.
And I believe this is the same in our country as well. We are getting support from JICA, and there is the program, bilateral international collaboration program called SATREPS. The title is really long. The project is the project for the development of hybrid water-related disaster risk assessment technology for sustainable local economic development policy in the Philippines. Maybe the name of the project is too long. That is why we have the abbreviation of the name of the project, and we call it HIDEP. And we call it the HIDEP SATREPS project. SATREPS refers to the science and technology, the research partnerships for sustainable development. And this project for more than 10 years, and there are various countries chosen, and there are various studies going on in parallel. And we are one of the member. In Japan, SATREPS is promoted and is supported by JST. And in the counterparts product countries outside Japan, it is supported by JICA. And thanks to support by JST and JICA, from 2020, we've been working in Japan, but in Philippines, we have the five-year project from 2021. But in April 2020, maybe you remember, but that was a time when COVID started. With COVID, it was difficult to, or it was impossible to go there, and we delayed the project by 1 year. That is why this project has begun from 2021, and it is still going on. And at the end of May in 2026 or in June, it will be over. And the objective of the project is to provide policy recommendations for sustainable economic development in urban and rural areas under climate change based on a water disaster risk assessment using a hybrid model that combines the climate change, hydraulics, etc. And so we working with the University of Philippines Los Banos in Philippines, and we also in Japan we have a University of Tokyo, Tohoku University, University of Shiga Prefecture, and Nagoya University engaged in the project. And what you might wonder what we mean by a water disaster risk assessment using a hybrid model. Today's forum is meant for the general public, so I'm not going to explain the details of the model, but this is to we are using the advanced model for the simulation. And by having such kind of analysis, we can calculate the precise change, and with that we can calculate the chances of the inundation. At the the Public Works Research Institute is working on this, and using that, we are using this hybrid model to assess the impact of the climate change in the future. And Tohoku University has created the rice development prediction model, and the using the information regarding inundation and what would happen to the rice plant can be calculated, and then we can predict the changes. And then the Kyoto University is predicting the scenario for the development, and to figure out what kind of sustainable economic development should we have. We've been engaged in this, and we are now starting to see the result. So today I would like to introduce some of them. Talking about the objective of the project, as I mentioned earlier, using data, we are trying to have the end-to-end approach that combines the observation and statistical data to visualization of the effects of disaster prevention investments. And we are also having the analysis from Philippines as well, and we are also utilizing big data as well. And I would like to share with you the part of the results. And this is the achievement, and not only myself, but as a project. But this is the climate model group results. And present climate is from 1979 to 2003, and we have the scenario for future climate, the 4 degrees increase, which is from 2075 to 2100, and we have the simulation regarding the change to the climate. In the future, there will be various changes, but the monthly temperature will be increasing. And if we look at the daily precipitation by month, we believe there will be an increase in the precipitation. And we are also expecting that there can be the rainy season becoming earlier. And using this, we had some people from the Philippines. There was the researcher called Mr. Vincente Bararan, and he has written a doctoral thesis, and he went back to his country last fall. And I would like to introduce what he has written in his thesis. This lake is the bigger than the Lake Biwa, but Laguna, there's only one river that is connected, and this is the river called Pasig River. So with this, the only one river, the water level of lake can be higher, and this is similar to Lake Biwa. And there are some measurement points, and based on the data coming from the data points, this is a result of the analysis. And when we do this kind of a calculation, we do the calibration of the model to see the accuracy or the precision, and then after checking that, we would use the model for the analysis. But this is the result of the verification of the accuracy of the model, and we are have done the simulation of the water level at the bottom, and you see there is a match between the analysis and the measurement. So, and this has told us that this model is quite accurate, and this is the changes over 25 years in the present and the future climates. And the question is, what will be the increase in the water level of the lake that may cause the inundation? If you look at the chart in the bottom, the black shows the current water level, and the green shows the future water level. And sometimes the level can be around 15 to 17 meters. If we compare over 25 years, inundation in the future, now it is 6 times a year, but it will be 17 times a year. And in the maximum, the depth can be 15 meters in the Lake Laguna. That is what we can tell from this chart. Now, what would happen to the inundation? This is the distribution of the plots. And if looking at the maximum flood depth over 25 years, the red part is the depth of 5 to 6 meters. And you see there will be inundation expanded in the future. In particular, for this area with the inundation, if we get the gap between present and future, these colored parts are the ones with more inundation. That is what we can tell from this chart. Right now, it is mentioned that the area with the 12.5 meters is not good for habitation, but even outside that, it will not be good for the habitation. So the question is how we can induce these people to move to somewhere else, and the population is growing in this area. So the question is how to prevent the inflow of the population so that there will be no cities, and what we can do to prevent that. That is the issue for the policy. Then how many people are living? This is coming. This is the plot result from Philippine side project members. And the yellow part is 25-meter elevation, and green is 10.5. But you see, even in the yellow part, there are various things like a community hall, etc. And the red part is where, due to the this is the same level as the Typhoon Ulysses. Here, maybe this doesn't seem so realistic, but if you actual areas, there's the community building. And what we're going to do regarding the existing building is a question. And what kind of restriction should we have for this area is the future issue. For example, regarding the area with no risk, it's okay. But now there are some areas where the risk is low, but there can be more risk in the future. So for those areas, we need to promote the people moving from that place, or maybe the floor should be elevated. And regarding the public buildings, of course, it will be better not to build any public building. So in order to realize that, that is a question, and we are having a consideration together with the Philippines. And regarding the farmland, this kind of information should be properly used in the Philippines. And lastly, I would like to explain about the talent development situation. I told you that the project has started from 2020, but that was hit by COVID. But up until September 2022, we could not go to Philippines, and for the first 2 years, we could not go to the Philippines. And we thought that we should do something. That is why we wanted, in order to have an education for the system, we had the online training system, and there were around 200 people who studied using this online program. I was also one of the lecturers, and we had a video recording, so to explain about the flooding simulation, and we also explained about the Japanese hazard map. We had such kind of lecture, but in Philippines, there isn't so much education on the map. So even people look at the map, they cannot understand what it means. Especially, there are some people who are not familiar with the inundation map. That is why it's difficult for them to read the map. Therefore, even if we distribute the paper map, it's difficult to understand. So this is something. This is the 3D hazard map. And with the cooperation of the Public Works Research Institute, we developed this kind of visualization map so that even the people who are not illiterate can understand the situation. We have created such kind of environment.
So in 2022, finally we were able to visit Philippines, and the Philippine people can come over to Japan. And we did more face-to-face training and visit the facility or visit the Lake of Biwa, the water control, and also took the picture together with the person who engaged in this water control in Sega. And this is the museum that I am explaining hazard map to them. And I think that this training, face-to-face training, is most meaningful compared to the online, of course. And we also visit the Philippines to give the training because they do observations, but the location is not consistent or the data is not necessarily consistent. So the necessity of the consistent data observation is emphasized at the training, and also the observation technology and the analysis the know-how. We explain that through the training. And we also provided the facilities for the observation. For example, this is the Doppler discharge observation. And this is what we have provided to them as part of the project and do the hands-on training to them to explain how to use those equipment. So this is a summary. Past, present, and future. It continues. And we have to establish the society with the risk-informed society, and to design the society that we would not regret. So it's not just we push them our idea. It is important to encourage them to have the ownership about this. The challenges. So we provide the know-how and expertise, and then also there are many things that we learn from them as well. So the project is still in progress until June 2026. So hopefully we'll be able to report the outcome of the entire project once the project is completed. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you for listening. We will now begin the tri-party discussion entitled Confronting the Risk of the Global Climate Change with Japan's Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Measures. Let me introduce the participants. First of all, from DRI, the Executive Director Yoshiaki Kawata. And from Kyoto University, Deputy Executive Director and the Director of the Center of the Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, Professor Eiichi Nakakita. And from the University of Tokyo Center of the Integrated Disaster Information Research at the Graduate School, the Professor Miho Ohara. So I would like to hand over to Executive Director Kawata to continue the proceedings. Okay, this is Kawata, and it'll be about 80 minutes discussion, the tri-party discussion, and the 80 minutes for 3 members. Usually, there are 5 participants for this long, and usually we fall short of the time at the end. However, we have plenty of time for each participant. And after graduating from the doctrine course of the Kyoto University, it's 50 years. And about a year ago, I was going to resign as a professor position. However, once the Ishiba-san inaugurated as a prime minister, and the officially announced that they are established the agency for the disaster reduction. And then I feel like I should not resign yet because it's been 20 years since I insisted the necessity of this agency, and by 2023 to establish the agency of the disaster mitigation was my goal, and in the Makuhari, Tokyo, there was the big symposium, and I provided the keynote speech. And I talked about this target. I failed to achieve the target to establish the disaster prevention agency, but finally the time comes. And I realized that 50 years of the research, and also for me personally, it's been 50 years on the anniversary, the wedding anniversary. And I cannot resign. There is no time to resign when it comes to the marriage. But anyway, this disaster prevention agency is finally going to be launched, and that will be the expert meeting on 30th of this month, and committee members are approximately 15. And first kickoff meeting, we are going to express the determinations. 5 minutes means 2,000 characters that I can speak. So now I am creating the draft for my speech in the meeting. And it's not just the establishment of this agency, but also to manage this agency to improve the functionality. And then we have to revise the constitutions and to clearly mention the natural disaster and the disaster prevention measures. Otherwise, simply establish this agency doesn't mean anything. So it needs to be incorporated into the constitutions. So at the time of the COVID, the government tried to establish the open hospitals, but they were not able to do that because that the Tokyo governor had the authority to make a decision. But it's not just the approval of the governor. There are so many rules and regulations in order to establish the temporary hospitals. And the government gave up to establish these temporary the hospitals at the time of the COVID because there were so many rules and regulations. So about this, the disaster prevention measures, the regulations need to be reviewed, and there needs to be the clear stipulations that the government is ready to take the actions. So the Liberal parties, that it's 3 years of the term for the office, but this agency should survive even after the first 3 years. So for that we need an understanding of the citizens regarding the disaster reduction. When disaster takes place, everybody pays a lot of attention. However, during the normal time, nobody pays much attention to the disaster. So first of all, we have to heighten the awareness and understanding of the national citizens regarding the disaster reduction. So I decided not to resign from the professor. because if I just becomes the emirate, and then I would lose the real power to take action. So I have to maintain my post as a professor for a few more years in order to make this agency successful. And I know them since that they were the students from the graduate schools. I know both of them since their the graduate school days, the time that they were still a little bit immature. I am not joking, but what I'm saying is that the accumulation of the knowledge brings the great outcome. And I myself used to be much more immature student than them. But anyway, as far as you have a very strong will and clear directions, you could grow up and to be a great professors like them. So I am much older than them, which could be the advantage or disadvantage. I don't know, but I would like to have this the tri-party discussions efficiently. And first of all, the about the current situation of the disaster reduction and mitigation in Japan, and Professor Nakakita, um, the I would like to ask you because that climate disaster is strongly related to the meteorology. But Professor Ohara, I am going to come to you soon. So, thank you very much. I am Nakakita from the University of Kyoto, and I will become the Emirates next year. And coincidentally, but I'm going to continue my research even after that. And regarding the disaster reduction, I would like to talk a bit about my younger days and why I decided to engage in this field of the disaster reduction. My mother, when she was the second grader at the elementary school in Osaka City, there was the Moroto typhoon hit Osaka. And at that time, the observation accuracy was not so high, and they didn't even know the typhoon was approaching. So she went to school, and before noon, the storm came, and the school building was wood building, and it collapsed and she was victimized. She left her handkerchief and she went back to school and to pick up, and then the building collapsed, and her father went to school to look for her, and she lost the consciousness at that time. And then the storm, the surge came immediately after that. So I was told this story when I was little, and may I continue? And my mother, when she got married, lived in the Johto ward in the municipal the housing. And there was the inundation. And when she was pregnant, she experienced the inundation and had the miscarriage. So I was told that story too. So I was supposed to have a bigger brother, but his life is lost through the miscarriage. And also there was the another stories regarding the river flooding. Then I naturally became interested in the meteorology. And talking about the rainy season, I used to like to watch the storm or the heavy rain when I was little. And when the river flood, and if that precious life is lost, and it makes my heart sunk. So I would like to do some the contribution to do something about this in this expert field. So in Japan, there are the major flooding happened in the past, and also I saw the Mekong River flooding and the Mekong Delta inundation is like the same size of the Kinki the region, and people who are living in the vicinity. Next time I visited the time of the flooding, and even the Liwi is flooded, and then they have to evacuate and move to the other the locations to live. So this natural disaster, the severity is almost the same. However, I realized that those people look so optimistic, and the kids are smiling and looks happy. But anyway, it's been many years that I engaged in this field, but my passion is to contribute to the disaster mitigation. And since I engage in the DRI, and this is a very good opportunity for me to learn more, and hopefully I can reflect those learnings to my research as well.
ので話
Now, coming back to the climate change, I started studying climate change in the 2016 or 17. So that was after 4 or 5 years after I became the professor. But the Ministry of Education of Japan had the program, and together with the climate or the meteorological experts. So I coming from us, I used to study civil engineering as well, but together with those people, I had occasion to work together, and that was something I really appreciated. And we also had the scientific future prediction, and that was not only about the weather or climate, but as a result of that, there can be a disaster or the hazards like inundation or the landslide. And I'm also studying the population reduction caused by that. What was unique in Japan's study, together in the early stage, the member of the civil engineering were working together with those studying in the climate. And there's a study for the disaster, even for the civil engineering. But although you study in the classes or not, those academics develop studying the climate damage, and I think that is the advantage that both the civil engineering experts and the climate experts can work together. And on the scientific and we don't want to leave the result as is. We want to connect that with some of the social matters. So, if we are to study the climate change, the lesson should be utilized for the flood control. So usually the scientific program lasts for 5 years, but when such a program starts, we have a connection with the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure, and while being conscious about the connection with the local governments, we are hoping so that our expertise or the result of our study will be used for the society, and that is why we had a connection with the public authorities. And when I was joining some meeting, so maybe because of my speech or because I'm appealing a lot of our study result, the people in the government started to believe in what we were saying. But if the government is starting to take action, there needs to be a solid evidence, and there are some constraints on the government side. But they came up with the idea, and then the people from the government is giving us a phone call to say, is this okay? And through this collaboration, there was a measure against the global warming, and we were say that it was decided that the assumption is that there will be a temperature increase by 2 degrees and more rain by 1.1 times. And we also came to know that only hardware measure is not good enough. That is why we should have the storage of the water along the river, and now there are measures taken throughout Japan. So that is a breakthrough that we have made. But so that was the first breakthrough. But we are now trying to have a second breakthrough so that we can have more of the integrated approach. Maybe I will touch upon this afterwards, but now we are having such a precise information regarding climate change, and I think this is a great advantage of Japan, and this was something magnificent about the next program, and because of this, we could come this far. And afterwards, I would like to talk about the relationship with the Southeast Asia, but I believe that is the advantage of Japan. And there was I talked about the Watergate of Osaka Prefecture, and that was something to deal with the storm surge. But the government is believing in what that was because the government believed in us. And in order to consider the design of the water gate, they believed in our prediction, and that was used for the design of the water gate. And I think this was something new. May I say one more thing? I visited the Maruyama River of Hyogo Prefecture, and I usually visit the river basin that can be inundation. And when I visited the Maruyama River, because of typhoon, there was a huge disaster with that river. And after that, there were various measures taken. And I think the municipalities or the local governments are taking action that was based on the recommendation by the central government. And this because this is the and it looks like they are trying to do this while being living in harmony with nature. If there were severe damage, I came to know that they are taking measures proactively. What he mentioned, the climate change or the inundation. Regarding these matters, historically speaking, the civil engineering faculty of Kyoto University used to be #1 in the world. So we call it the hydrological the study, but how with the rain, how much water will be there in the river? This kind of analysis was the Kyoto University was the best. And the excellent students from Kyoto University went to the former construction ministry, which is now the MRIT. And he is the #1 in the world in this kind of study. And we have had this kind of history. I am 13 years older than him. And in 1961, when there was a second Muroto typhoon, I experienced a typhoon. But at that time, there used to be what was called the order for the evacuation. And there was evacuation order because of typhoon. However, in those days, school buildings were wooden. There was no instruction where to go, but there was only an order for the evacuation in those days. Therefore, then I believe there is the same issue in developing countries. Even in Nepal, if, if there was a risk of the inundation disaster, there is an order for evacuation. However, people don't know where to go. In other words, this kind of the things on the ground are not catching up with the academic study. Then this was true in Japan in those days. Even if there was the evacuation order, 30% of the people tried to evacuate. However, authorities didn't say where to go. Therefore, with the Isewan typhoon, there were 5,800 people passed away. But the reason why they died, because in those days the school buildings were wooden and there was a strong wind and it was not safe. So, but still, people had to evacuate to the place that was dangerous. In Japan, the fact that there are improvement is thanks to the academic study, but that was because such kind of academic information was leveraged by the government. And after Kanto earthquake, there was the Earthquake Research Institute of Tokyo Universities, but that was not made to alleviate the earthquake disasters, but that was meant to study the mechanism of an earthquake. But this is very difficult, so they are not coming up with the academic achievement. It is mentioned that the Nankai Trough earthquake will be happening, but now the probability is increased to 80%. But that is a lie. But we only have the data of the Nankai Trough earthquake only for 9 times. But this Nankai Trough earthquake has been happening from 1 million years. So Izuhan, the peninsula, used to be a sea. And but with the collision, it has become a peninsula. With such a long history, with only the 9 times the data to have a long-term prediction, it is challenging to begin with. But because we get the results, the people believe that is true. But it will be happening. So that is why we have to be prepared for that. So August 8th, last year, there was the emergency information for the Nankai Trough earthquake, and everybody checked the supplies, or everybody checked where to go for the evacuation. So without such information, people would not be taking action. So in that sense, I think Nankai Trough earthquake emergency information was quite success. Of course, for disaster prevention, academic information is needed. But even without information, it's not that we should not do anything. So in terms of the water disaster prevention, now we have an advancement of the academic study. So the Japanese government is utilizing that. And as Professor Ohara mentioned, now throughout Japan, we have the hazard map. And I think it is only Japan that we have this. Even in the United States or the other developed countries, they don't have such kind of thing. It is only Japan that has this kind of thing, but nobody knows about this. I believe people will only get information through SNS. But in SNS, you would never get such kind of important academic information. Therefore, in that sense, I think Japan is #1 in the world. And the people know that people and the people are not understanding that this kind of evacuation information is a special service from the government. So he is playing a central player to come this far. So the result should be actually utilized. And we need to have such kind of political mechanism. And if there's a disaster prevention agency of government, they should have the easy to understand explanation to make everybody understand that we need to evacuate when there is such kind of instruction. meteorological agency, even if they provide the accurate information, 1% of the people are not evacuating. So even if there's a precise prediction, if the citizens are not evacuating, it is meaningless. So what the government needs to seriously consider how to minimize the risk. Otherwise, just creating the agency is not the end of the story. We need to have the effective mechanism that would work in reality, but that is not the case now. Therefore, based on direction that was mentioned by Dr. Nakagita, if there are more global warming, there will be more severe water damage. And the question is what the Japanese people should do. And we need to have a determination that this will be a global standard. Otherwise, maybe compared to France, it's not good just to say that because we are ahead of France, we are okay. Now, there's advancement of the disaster prevention the technology. We should become the role model for the world, and we need to have such kind of motivation. This is clear, but that is not true yet. So now, my request for Professor Ohara is true that in Philippines, it's good to have that study for the molecular, but 15 years ago, regarding earthquake as well, with the JICA's support, there was a Marikina's project. And in the same way, from Japan, there were many researchers who made a cooperation in the Philippines. However, as a result, it didn't work because in those days, there was a person called Punon Bayan who was studying earthquake, but he passed away because of airplane crash. That was one of the reasons. Another thing is that because of the mayor election of that city, the mayor who supported this program lost in the election. So that was why there was no budget, no more budget for that project. That was not because of the researchers' reason, but because of the political reason, project was suspended. And this is common in the developing countries. Although there was eh, there, I think there are some challenges, although we have this kind of a collaborative program. So what's your take on this? Thank you. As a matter of fact, the Manakina project that I think what you're referring to is the ICTAP project. That was the project for the mitigation of the damage from the earthquake or the tsunami. And Kyoto University was playing central. And our research lab in the Tokyo University was not taking part. But there was the solicitation for the member to create a map. And I volunteered to be a member of the program. And I have done some work in Manila to create a map. And actually, I went to the Philippines for the first time in order to support this ICTA project. In those days, the researchers, that was the earthquake-related project. And they carefully explained the result of the project. And even if we went back to the hotel, there was the enthusiastic project discussion, and I observed that. And that was very much inspiring, and that helped me to have the international study. Maybe Professor Kawata didn't remember that, so I wanted to remind him. But although I was outside the project, I took part in that, and I was really grateful for that occasion. But as you say, in the Philippines, due to political reasons, sometimes the mayor or the head of municipalities can be changed. And this year, on May 12th, there was the election, and our counterpart, we a bit worried what would happen to the election, but that is true. And in other municipalities, I visited there after a long time, but the mayor was changed, and it was difficult. And there was a time that when it became difficult to sustain the project. But for this kind of the map or this kind of project, there is the universal interest. And even with the new mayor, the, I was questioned, what was the relationship with the former mayor. But after explanation, the new mayor said that they are going to cooperate. And of course, we might have been fortunate, but despite of the political, um, the uh, the the situation, I think what is important is the careful explanation. And my experience told me that if there's a perpetual or the universal interest, it can work. Of course, we need to provide the careful explanation that we need to gain confidence from them. And then with that, we can survive such kind of political changes. But it's true that there can be a lot of political impact from in the developing countries. That is why we want to see how it goes.
So I held the workshops for the local citizens in Philippines, and it went more successfully than we did in Japan. It is because in compulsory education in Philippines, they are receiving the good understanding. So the outcome of the workshop was much more successful than in Japan. So my point is that we have to get rid of the idea that the developing countries are things are delayed or behind us. For example, the space food, the little package of the space food, the tens of thousands such space the food can be stored. And in Japan, when the disaster took place, the people complain about the how untasty and cold the food was provided at the time of the disaster, or the temporary houses. When the Nankai Trough earthquake hit Japan, and how much food we have to serve is a 20 days of the food have to be prepared. And then when we said that it's not totally not acceptable, and then we changed to the period of 1 week because currently they say 3 days. That 1 day provided by the municipality, and the second day by the national government, and third day have to provide yourself. But when you go to Philippines, they do have the preserved food at the time of the disaster. So it is more advanced in a sense in the Philippines, and we need a lot of improvement about this. Well, in Japan, at the time of the disaster, especially in the Nankai Trough, the scale is too big. And the Noto Peninsula is like 100,000. And the Nankai Trough, it'll be the 61 million. So for that, temporary houses of the cardboard, it is impossible for that scale. But the demand of the evacuee is getting higher and higher. But when the inland earthquake or Nankai Trough earthquake actually occur, it is almost impossible to meet all those demands of the evacuees. So it is the total mistakes to believe that Japan is most advanced in the sense of the disaster. But for example, they complain that when you go to Italy, the food provided is much more tasty. So it is a difference of the scale, and you have to go with the Sophia constitutions. It's wrong. So Japanese common sense and the demand for the disaster support is going too high, and the developing countries are well preserved. So we have to think about this. And in Japan, JICA is making a significant effort. And at the time of the Pinatubo and the eruption in the volcano, and the JICA went over there to provide the support. They make a great contribution, but it's not always Japan that we can contribute at the time of the disaster outside of Japan. But we have to learn lesson from the developing countries as well, because now that when the affected people in the affected area demand, and the Japanese government or local government try to meet those demands like one way. But there is of course, the limitation of the budget, and that there's a significant allocation of the budget, but we would not be able to afford that to meet all those demands. So have to share those experiences, because I am concerned that the life in a temporary house is getting more and more luxurious, and that is a very big issue actually. So as Professor Ohara said, you're doing the joint the research with Philippines. So when you report the outcome, I want you to include the improvement area and Japanese disaster mitigation measures. Thank you very much. And I would like to add something. And at the ECTAP, I did the supporting for mapping, and I participated in a workshop. I mean, I observed the workshops, and I was impressed because that many people raised a hand and expressed their opinion. So it is, I think, that because of the nationality of the Filipinos, they're very open-minded and express. But when I brought the map, and then the map shows that your habitat area is going to be flooded, I at first hesitated to talk about that because it's a very sensitive matter. But participants in the workshop were quite open-minded, and they were so excited looking at the map, and even laughed looking at the potential risk. In Japan, when we do the workshop, usually elderly people participate, and when I talk about the potential risk, and they look so depressed, and the atmosphere is quite dark. However, in the Philippines, the atmosphere is so lively. So I was surprised about it. It is not simply because they were optimistic, but also they were quite adaptive, and they have the know-how how to adapt at the time of the emergency situation like natural disaster, and that's why they could be so positive about this. So when I did the explanation of the mapping, and also I conduct the survey to the local communities, and those who live in a very poor area, and then he came over to me and asking, "Are you the expertise in this field? And what would happen to this area?" So I have never asked by the local people, just visiting there for the research. So I was so surprised how these local people are interested in this, and even know that the climate change. So it was a very surprising experience for me. So Philippines often experience the disasters. So the difference from Japan is that each individual students takes this issue as its own. Therefore, they take various measures to heighten the floor of the houses, for example. Well, of course, there is some limitations about the each individual can do. For example, the outlet. So they have to prepare the outlet for the power supply to 1 meter height or even higher place in the house. So they are adjusting their lifestyle and the design of the house in accordance with those disasters. So those positive and aggressive attitude is quite obvious in those area who are quite adaptive to the climate changes. And there are a lot of things that we learn from them. And when the students visit there, and it's a very good learning for the Japanese students as well to learn from local people. So I myself learned a lot from them through my project. So international cooperation is not one way. It has to be two-way. But we tend to forget about it. But in fact, there are many things that I learned from Philippines. So I'm experiencing very good lessons. Thank you for the comments. And next, the topic is that how much the Japanese measures impact the overseas and how we can share the know-how and expertise that Japan accumulated with overseas. And Professor Nakakita, you said that the Japan is most advanced in terms of the analysis of the disaster-related data. So, and the Western countries probably their interest and the concerns is weaker. Well, thank you for the question. Related to what Professor Ohara mentioned, the collaboration is supposed to be two-way, and the difference from the Western countries like Europe and the Southeast Asia, like including Taiwan, Korea, torrential rains and the earthquakes, those natural environment is much severer compared to Europe or Western countries. And the severity is getting more and more because of the global warming, and Japanese people's awareness is gradually increasing because of that. So the temperature rise 2 degrees Celsius might be acceptable, but 4 degrees Celsius is never be acceptable. And those are like a common sense for the Japanese. And we have to share those common sense with the people in Asia or outside of the Asia through information sharing, because this future is certainly coming. And we are living in the natural environment. That's why we have to be aware of those changes. And we have accumulated the knowledges about this disaster mitigation in Asian countries because of the frequency. So those know-how have to be exported to the Western countries as well, because we are anticipating the higher the limitation, like beyond the tolerance. So especially the area with the severe natural environment, the situation is more severe. And climate change projection information, and also the utilization of those projections, we are making a great contribution to the Southeast Asian countries. So, like the climate and the predictions, not just in Japan, but also the entire Southeast Japan, so that the Asian countries are able to do the predictions and well prepared for the potential risks. So there's like a Mr. Parkes from Philippines and other the expert visit Japan and share those projections, and they bring those know-how to their own country, and also the eye charm, that part of the Professor Ohara's project, and also the many other the young folks coming from the Southeast Asia. So as a first step, we are providing the support to share those information first, and then based upon the information, how to take the disaster mitigation measures. Of course, there are already know-how and knowledge is accumulated in each country, and so does Japan. And each country must have those accumulated knowledges, and also the awareness of the local citizens might vary depending on the countries. But I think that through those information sharing as a first step, we will be able to coexist. So unless you have enough budget and technologies, you cannot do the accurate climate predictions. So that's why Japan is blessed with those the budget and the know-how. That's why we try to share those know-how through the meteorological programs. And the civil work area, the same can be done through the information sharing, and the hazard mapping as the part of the project. So what we can say is that the modern water control is no longer modern, and we have to update this in a timely manner as well. And so this is something that we would like to share with the Asian countries, and because that we cannot stick to the conventional way.
私ももう
That is what I also wanted to say. In other words, I think there are many things that we get from as well. Ohara-san, what do you think? Philippines, in a sense, is rather advanced among developing countries. Maybe because of the dissemination of American education, and so the system is good. But I think there are many things that are not matching. So what's your take on this? Yes, as a matter of fact, in the Philippines, as Professor Kawata mentioned, technology skill level is high. But with a lot of assistance institution, when there is such kind of institution, it is advancing. But when that is stopped, it is not sustainable. And I keenly felt that with the municipalities that I visited. I thought that they didn't have much data, but actually, as a matter of fact, they had such a magnificent drawing of the land use. And I asked them, you have this kind of thing? And then they said that a certain international institution created a map when they were supporting this municipality. So this map data or I asked them to give us such kind of the data with a geographical institution system, but then they said no. So when there was such kind of international institution helping them, they only had the drawing or the image file with a JPEG, but there was no raw data handed to them. And without raw data, that was not usable, and it was just a mere drawing. So when there was an international institution support, because they have Philippines has the certain technological level, they can understand, but that is not deeply penetrated in the region. So that is why in my project I wanted to avoid such kind of situation. That is why we have given the raw data to the local people, and we are also having the talent development program as well, so that they can continue to create such kind of data. I thought it needed to be sustainable, and the Filipino can speak English. That is why there are a lot of international institutions providing support in Philippines. But to put it the other way around, there were many international institutions coming in, but after they left, it is not the remaining. But that is something I wanted to avoid in my project. Thank you. I want to raise some change. In Turkey in 1999, there was a big earthquake, and around 28,000 people died. And at that time, I visited Turkey 5 times. And there was a discussion what to do about the construction code, but it looks like an anti-seismic code of United States were to be applied in Turkey, as is. But there's a cash code. But if there's one child born in Turkey, the floor will be increased by one. So Turkish house, you can see the steel frames from the roof. So if you look at the house, you can tell there are how many members of the family. But with the support of the civil engineering society of the U.S., that civil construction code was made in Turkey. But after that, there was it was mentioned that they didn't have to comply with that construction code, but the people had to pay money to the government. And so with the Turkey or the Syrian earthquake, there was a huge damage. That was because many of the steel frame buildings were destroyed because of earthquake. Although in 1999 there was the disaster, and although there was a renewed code, it was mentioned that the people didn't have to comply with the new code, but still they had to pay money to the government. That was the policy that was taken in the Turkey. That is why the new steel frame building was destroyed because of the earthquake, and there was a huge damage. And many new buildings. And I didn't go to investigate what the situation was after that because nobody criticized this. In other words, the worst thing was the Turkish government. Of course, there could have been various circumstances. However, that ended up killing more than 50,000 people. Therefore, when that earthquake occurred, I thought that Istanbul was damaged because the epicenter was moved to west. So I thought it was Istanbul, but it was more in the south that was really damaged. It looks like there should be more of the international criticism for such kind of the policy, but there's no voice like that, and people are only talking about the international aid or the volunteers. But if there is no change to this, no matter what we do, the same thing will be happening. And that there can be even severer damage than before. That is what we can say about Turkey. But who's responsible for this? Do you think this is the politicians' responsibility? As a matter of fact, when there was I became interested in this field, triggered by the Kobe earthquake, and my doctoral thesis was the comparative study for the anti-seismic the measures between Turkey and Japan. And what you have mentioned, it is true. You have pointed out the root cause of the Turkey, but when we invited the Filipino people in Japan, there was something I learned. When the Filipino uh, researchers came to Japan, it became possible for them to come from September 2022. Well, I'm sorry, it was November or December of 2022 to invite those Filipino people. And we have made them see the adjustment pond, and we were studying together. And in the end, we heard everybody's opinions or the comments, and several people said that in Japan, they thought that uh, the they were surprised to create this kind of facility, thinking about the risk of the rare disaster. And if there's a risk information, we believe that we have to take measures. And hazard map is now distributed in 98% of the local governments, but to we believe that it is very important to take measures against the risk. But in developing countries, even if they could produce information, the communication of the information or the utilizing of the information is not enough in developing countries. And that the Filipino people mentioned that that is something that needs to be seriously considered. But this person was impressed that Japanese people are taking such kind of information seriously and taking action. We do seriously consider disaster information. Japanese people take it personal, and we Japanese people think that it is very important to take action, and we believe that there should be no loophole in the system. And we need to have a consistent design for that. And we think this is only possible if the society is informed of the risk. But in developing countries, I think there's a gap between the people who knows and don't know. And that is why it is not consistent. Professor Nakakita, what's your take on this regarding this matter? In case of earthquake, obviously, if there's an active fault, or that we know that there will be earthquake happening, but when it comes to the climate disaster, when it comes to there can be the linear precipitation zone happening anywhere. The people without experience, they might think that this will never happen, but I think that is dangerous. So meteorological agency regarding these kind of risks, anybody can say after something occurs, but before anything occurs, especially to the local governments, how can we make them understand? Or it can be MNIT as well. I know that the local governments are making hazard maps, but there can be a disaster even if it is not experienced. So I think that kind of understanding is needed. So there's a field of the comprehensive disaster. Even if there was no climate change, something that happened here can be happening elsewhere. So in the Bosaiken Research Institute, we call it the missile, or this is an unprecedented disaster, the disaster that is not experienced. And we are saying that we need to have such kind of mindset. And we need to have such kind of awareness, and the actions are taken accordingly. And the same happens for the landslides. There are a lot of reclaimed land, but still, there can be the same kind of a landslide risk in other places. And now there can be more of the torrential rainfall in the Tohoku area, which was never the case in the past. Maybe in the past, it happened that this didn't happen, but with the climate change, it can be happening. So we need to make information available. And as Professor Kawata mentioned, if we needed to have more of the information provided to the general public to be aware of the possible risk. And what kind of information should be provided? With what kind of criteria can we say that this area is risky? So past experiences should be utilized, but that's not the only thing. We also need to utilize scientific information as well to provide the risk information. Maybe I'm not squarely answering your question, but I believe the society needs to put more pressure to the government. Now, the Meteorological Agency and the MRIT is trying to disclose more of the precise information, but still there are loopholes. And I think we need to do the study to provide the information smartly, and we need to make the public authority understand that point as well. We don't have too much time left, but Professor Ohara, you talked about the Philippines, but you yourself is doing a study in a wider area. So what do you think is the future challenge of Japan? If a disaster prevention agency is established, I think it would be a great improvement, but that is not enough. And I'm saying that we need to revise the constitution as well. So what's your take on this? My counterpart of the Filipino project is the Filipino University International Disciplinary Center for Water. That is the center to do the interdisciplinary study for water. And it was more about the public policy. So that was the interdisciplinary the study center. But what I learned from them is that for them, public policy, there's a low barrier or the low barrier between them. There's one campus near Lake Laguna, and it looks like that is like a habitat for everybody to live together. And they have a strong sense of community, and many people know each other. But there are no silos. In Japan, there are a lot of silos, but that is not the case in Philippines. And in my university, we have. But there are a lot of silos in my university, but that is not the case in that university in Philippines. The people in the civil engineering field and the people in other fields are talking to each other face to face, and I think that was very much inspiring. And the same goes for the disaster prevention. There are various fields involved, so I think there should be less barrier in order to have more of active discussion.
And Filipino are quite talkative, and they are very good at overcoming those the barriers or the borders. But when it comes to Japan, we tend to stay in the silo, and there are our own expertise. And if we get out, and then we feel some awkward and hesitate. And especially because of the COVID, the younger people tend to stay home, and they no longer are interested in traveling abroad. And we tend to be, contained in the familiar zone. So if that's the interdisciplinary people can exchange opinions across the border of the field and exchange opinions and have the active discussions and then figure out the solutions. I'm afraid that the Japanese people are not so good at this. How about you, Professor Nakakita? And this is the conclusion, right? So about the climate change and the disaster reduction and mitigation, what would happen to the climate change and in the future? As a scientist, we have to do those predictions, and this prediction have to reflect on the designing and developing the city and towns. So, talking about the disaster management agency, the restoration needs to take into consideration the climate change. So the climate change is the have to be the necessary element to be considered in the restoration plan from the disaster, because even if you restore from the disaster and then you have to adjust to the climate change, it will be the redundancy. So we would like to avoid such a redundancy. Thank you. The launching the disaster management agency, yes, I would like to devote myself, do my job, but Japanese people, there are many the researchers for the disaster, the prevention or the mitigation, but there is the retirement age at any institutions, and after this retirement age, they no longer have to work. But in the Harvard University, there are many professors and ADs, and the National Science Fund, which is sort of the science research and development expenses, can cover the salary for the professors in the U.S. So if we take the similar measure in Japan, we will be able to keep the excellent professors even after the retirement age, and then they are able to continue their researches. But in Japan, currently, once they reach the retirement age and they stop the research, and it is such a waste. We have to leverage the accumulated knowledges for the future society. Otherwise, despite of having the great expertise and knowledge, once they reach the retirement age and they just take care of their grandson or granddaughter, it's a pity. So we have received the little bit subsidy for the research and development, but once you reach the retirement age, you no longer get the salary. So many people leave the institution. So the people, the excellent people, if you are acknowledged about their research outcome, and then if the salary can be paid continuously as part of the science or research development budget, because disaster, the natural disaster brings the significant damage, but it doesn't happen so frequently. Therefore, the accumulation of those knowledge needs to be guaranteed. Otherwise, well, hopefully there will be the younger people get involved in this research. But as you know, the child birth rate is decreasing in Japan, and they're getting more and more aging society. So those who engaged in the research of the disaster reduction is shrinking. So we have to keep the certain level of and the quality, and also have to keep the quantity of the researchers as well. Otherwise, we will be left behind in near future. So how we can retain the excellent talent in the society, especially in the field of the disaster reduction. This is for the human beings. It's not the robot. So you need the career, long career. So the researchers who have acknowledged by the society needs to be able to continue their research. That is for the abundant society because and also when the society becomes more abundant, the disaster becomes more complicated as well. And it's been more than 20 times that we hold this forum every year. And it's not just a matter of the disaster reduction, but also the all other social issues. In order to overcome them, we need a necessary talent to work on that. So um, not just a disaster, but we have to have the very fixed basis, and those skilled researchers and professors needs to be able to continue their work as far as they are healthy. Because again, it's such a pity that they just take care of the grandchildren after the retirement. So I'm not sure that if I can insist this at the time of the launch of the disaster management agency, but again, it is about the human beings. It is about the talent. You need education, and once the talent is nurtured, and then they have to keep them as long as possible and hand it down to the next generation. Because the increasing the elderly population itself is the risk. So when we think about the disaster management, we really need to retain the well-experienced researchers. Speaking of which, I myself, I never know that I might have the stroke while I'm sleeping because I'm 78 years old. So you never know when you get a stroke or attack. So there is nothing guaranteed about your future career. But what I'm saying is that the excellent talent needs to be made full use for the society because the ITs or before IT or well-beings, this is more important, and we have to share that. And the conclusion is DRA forum. We are going to have the part 2 in September, and we are going to have this forum next year again. And in the hot Kobe, there are the international institution gather. So it is going to continue forever. So I hope that everyone here would live long. And thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much to the participant. And Professor Nakakita and Professor Ohara is going to leave the stage. Thank you very much for your participation. And now the Executive Director of DRI, Mr. Kawata, is going to provide the closing remark. Well, I am not so excellent and capable to make the closing remark, but when this DRI established, the Governor Kaihara appointed me as the executive director for the DRI without my consensus. And at that time, it was decided upon the consultation with the government. So that means that I cannot resign on my own decree. So in order for me to resign, there has to be the consensus between the governor and the national government. Therefore, yes, I am committed to this job, and I feel obligation as well. And fortunately, I am healthy, so I'd like to do what I can do, and because despite being healthy, I do not want to give up my responsibility. And this DRA forum, while I am healthy, I'm going to continue. And even after me, hopefully this forum would continue. In the panel discussion, the tri-party discussion, there are many issues regarding the disaster reduction still remained, and we have to solve one by one. And for that, we do need the talent, the human resource. So in Hot Kobe, there are many, like 20 international institutions and organization gathers, and we can collect the wisdoms from each, which I think is very good. So it is a very good asset after the great Hanshin Awaji earthquake, and we would like to continue nurturing the environment to make full use of those assets through the public and private partnership. Without the consensus of the local citizens, we are not be able to continue these activities. So that's why this is a very good opportunity for collect and then get the feedback from the local citizens. Because what is worst is the non-interest. I want each citizens to have the interest and speak up. And that kind of the open society is needed to secure the safety and security of the country. Because now that Japan is aging, and that means that the more people are more vulnerable to the natural disaster. So we have to collect all the wisdoms, not just the public sector, but also the local citizens. Therefore, I would like you to support this DRA activities, which is continuing in Hot Kobe. So I would like you to be aware of that, and hopefully we would like to continue this activity together with you. And thank you again for your participation and attendance despite your busy schedule today. Thank you. And that's concluded the DRA Forum 2025, Part 1. Thank you very much for your participation today. So please make sure you have all your belongings with you. And on September 17, we will have the DRA Forum 2025, the Part 2, to combat the climate change. So I'm looking forward to your participation. Thank you.